Welcome back, everybody, to the College Football Eliminator Series, where we do go ahead and take really that comprehensive look around the entirety of major college football and really talk about the teams that still have a realistic chance to make the college football playoff, as well as those teams that did get eliminated as a result of last week's competition. As we're starting to reach about the halfway point in the year, we're coming into week number 7 of the 2025 college football season. So, very excited about this breakdown here tonight where we talk about who still has a realistic shot, as well as a couple of games that I am seeing as realistically elimination games that are happening around the country. Definitely want to stick around and see the entire thing. I hope you guys enjoy this one. And so with that being said, if you really appreciate the content on this channel, make sure you go ahead and do a couple of things for me first and foremost, right? Make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, as well as hit that subscribe button if you happen to be brand new and you really enjoy the content here on College Football Red Zone. A lot of you guys that are watching are not doing either of those things. It only takes a few seconds and it would tremendously help a brother out. I would truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. So, all that administrative stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into what we have going on. So when we last kind of talked about the college football playoff eliminator series, we talked about how there were 78 teams left alive, and now we're starting to get to roughly the halfway point in terms of teams that are still alive and teams that have been eliminated at this point in the year. This week, we did see 6 teams did get eliminated as a result of this week's competition, as well as some teams that, are starting to reach the brink. Let's go ahead and throw up the tier maker right here where, we really are taking that hard look in terms of, okay, here's the teams that are still alive, and then now here are some teams that are on the brink, as well as teams that, have been eliminated and what time period that did that occur. With that being said, though, let's take a comprehensive look. So, as you guys can see, we do have 6 teams eliminated, some from the G5 ranks, but we do also have a couple of power level schools in here as well, and rightfully so. Boston College, for example, is a real good example of a team that has officially been eliminated because, listen, they've already have 4 losses on the year. They were just blown out by the Pitt Panthers, and that was a big game for Pitt as well. Pitt could have dropped to that win out and get helped here if they lost this one, while Boston College would have remained alive. But yeah, Boston College now has 4 losses on the year, so they're done. And then Colorado also with multiple losses on its resume as well. They do have multiple Big 12 conference losses, so I think the best case scenario for Colorado, even if they win out, is 9-4. And even with a Big 12 championship, seeing what's happening in the American, as well as a couple of really good teams that are emerging in not just the Sun Belt, but also a couple of teams in the Conference USA that might make some noise as well. I think that definitely needs to be talked about. On top of all that, the Mountain West also has a couple of viable teams still remaining at this point in the year. So all that being said, even if Colorado finds a way to win out, gets to 9-4, it's going to be a hard time. Going to be a really hard time for them to really overcome what they're doing in terms of in comparison to the other potential AQs that could be coming out of G5. That's not just the Americans. So that's why Colorado has effectively been eliminated. Also do have our fair share of G5 teams that have been knocked down as well. UM Monroe, the Warhawks are officially done. We talked about them last week having a elimination game against Northwestern, and unfortunately Northwestern skull drugged them in their home stadium up in Evanston, Illinois. So they're officially done. Texas State surprisingly in here as well. They do only have a couple of losses. One of them was to Arizona State, which, okay, understandable. That's a borderline top 25 team. But then they did just drop a game to Arkansas State. Butch Jones coming in on the hot seat as of right now. Been a rough season for that Arkansas State squad, but pulling off a big upset. They beat Texas State in Sun Belt Conference play. That's a G5 loss for Texas State, so that knocks them out as well. But that's not the only G5 team being knocked out, right? New Mexico in a hard-fought battle against San Jose, but unfortunately San Jose was still able to make slightly more plays, and New Mexico was able to, so that does result in New Mexico being dropped out. That's their second loss of the year. And then the Ohio Bobcats, probably one of the bigger upsets that we saw within the G5 spectrum. Ohio losing to Ball State, the Cardinals getting a big time win at home. Shout out to the Cardinals and what they're doing, taking down Ohio, which, for a little bit looked like the favorite to win the MAC. And now Ohio, not only with those two losses that they suffered at the hands of Rutgers and Ohio State as well, but that Ball State loss is going to really be the nail in the coffin for the Ohio Bobcats. So we do see 6 teams eliminated. That's going to bring us down to 72 teams. We do now get to a point where we have a couple of teams that are starting to get a little bit closer to the brink since we revisited this last week. For example, got a few teams from the ACC that essentially need to win out in order to have any shot of making the playoff. So, for example, North Carolina, we just saw them get dominated by Clemson. North Carolina, they do just have one loss in ACC play, so there is a path for North Carolina if they can find a way to right the ship, go out there, get to the ACC title game, win it, and then hopefully have enough chaos around the country to where North Carolina can find a way to squeak in. But it's going to be a rough road for North Carolina. Syracuse is a similar story. We saw them lose handily. Well, not handily, but it was a convincing win for SMU. Syracuse now also with 3 losses as well, not just from the Tennessee game, but we did see them. I believe it was Duke that handed Syracuse another loss as well. So Syracuse now has multiple ACC losses, so they're going to need a lot of help. And then Cal just lost a couple of games, but one of those games was a 34-0 shutout to San Diego State. So that really hurts Cal. Not to mention Duke makes a cross-country road trip over 2,800 miles and still beat your ass in your own building. Not a good look for Cal. They lost their second game in the year. Still alive, but again, a team that really is going to need to win out in order to potentially make a trip to the CFP. Those are teams that, including the other teams that are in that tier, that could win out and still ultimately be left out, right? Those are all real possibilities. So counting the other teams that were here last week but haven't moved off yet, we got 9 teams in that one where you got to win out and get some help. And then some new teams that are in a slightly more comfortable category, and that is the category where, you can win out. If you win out, you can at least get at large consideration. We do have 4 new teams here. Most of them are actually half of the new teams are from the Big Ten. Kentucky just now has their 3rd loss of the year. Been a rough one for them in SEC play, but not the only power conference team that's really struggling. Wisconsin, they haven't really shown much life against any program, really, that has some sort of pulse. Notably lost to Maryland, but they all now also have losses to Alabama and Michigan. They have 3 losses. Purdue, listen, we knew it was going to be a long year for Purdue. Figured we were going to see them on this list eventually. They now have 3 losses, all to power conference opponents, and that's all to the Big Ten as well. And then UCF with a heartbreaking loss to Kansas last weekend. UCF had multiple opportunities, possibly take it into overtime and win it outright, but unfortunately, UCF could not pull it out. So UCF now has a couple of losses. They can still find a way to get at large consideration if they do win out in the regular season, but going to be a tough one. They have Cincinnati on the road, and Cincinnati's looked really good, which does bring me to my next point. If your team does not show up on this particular tier maker, that does mean that your team is completely safe as of right now. No one, of course, is either close to locking up a spot or has officially locked up a spot. So right now, we've got 72 teams alive that are still vying for 12 playoff spots. But yeah, but definitely let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Whether you think there is a team that hasn't been knocked out yet that realistically should, or if there is some other comments that you have regarding any part of the tier maker as well. So all that said, appreciate you guys watching through the entirety of the CFP Week 7 elimination special here in the 2025 college football season. Do have 2 elimination games, as I mentioned earlier. So with that said, if you guys, before getting into these elimination games and previewing these games real fast, again, it only takes a couple of seconds to do these things. Please make sure you're hitting that like button, and please make sure you're hitting that subscribe button as well. It truly does help a brother out. I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. But let's get into it though. Two CFP elimination games, both of which are happening at the G5. So, first game that we have is going to be happening over in the Conference USA. Conference USA, shout out to them as they are starting to get into that sphere where we are seeing Wednesday games starting to happen. Very excited to see that. That's an additional day of football, and I think everyone is excited for that. That being said, though, the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, they are going to make the trip slightly northeastern. If I have my geography right, they are going to one of the smallest stadiums in the entirety of the FBS, where it is home to the Kennesaw State Owls. Kennesaw State looking like a solid team, definitely an improved squad in what could be a very pivotal early CUSA battle. Currently slated to happen at 7 p.m. Eastern over on ESPNU. Louisiana Tech, man, this is going to be a really fun one. We have seen the Kennesaw State offense improve slightly ever since the Indiana game and the Wake Forest matchup as well. But Louisiana Tech, not a lot of talk about the Bulldogs, but that Louisiana Tech team, silently one of the best defenses in the entire country. Purely from at least from a statistical standpoint. You could argue talent in schematics all you want, but statistically, this Louisiana Tech team is getting it done on the defensive side of the ball. They are allowing barely over 13.5 points per game, which, with the exception of the LSU matchup, that is going to win you a lot of football games. And the offense is really starting to come along as well. We saw the other week where Louisiana Tech, they're able to come out. They're able to put up a 30 spot on UTEP. It's not a super explosive offense that Louisiana Tech has over there, but it's starting to play a little bit more complementary football. That's really what you expect from Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, right? Where you're going to see a really strong defense, as well as an offense that's typically going to do enough to make sure that they win games and have that offensive balance. The quarterback play is starting to improve, and then the ground game is also starting to come along for Louisiana Tech. That's going to help them control tempo, and that's been the case outside of the LSU game that we've seen so far. But that being said, that does not mean that you should be sleeping on this Kennesaw State team whatsoever. Jerry Mack has done a tremendous job. And one thing that wasn't talked about was the returning production, because of the fact that if you're returning the majority of your starters from, a 2-10 and a 3-9 team and in a G5, is that returning production really valuable? But Jerry Mack has taken really fundamentally the same roster from last year and really has done a good job of maximizing the talent that's on this list. Perfect example being really competitive for Wake Forest and almost pulling that upset off way back in week number 1. And even outside of the Indiana game, where obviously Indiana looks like a supernova, that's a top 5 team in the nation in my opinion. Outside of being blown out by those guys, Kennesaw State has really shown a ton of grit. They've won all of their G5 games so far. Their FC, I believe they had an FCS matchup as well. But yeah, huge shout out to Jerry Mack, really showing that competitive grit. They're gonna have that's gonna be like a home stadium that could be rocking a little bit. And it's particularly a team as well there. You are starting to see like improvements in the run game and in the secondary too. Like those DBs for Kennesaw State, they can certainly make some plays happen. So really expect this to be really a strategic and grinding affair where possessions really are amplified and really scrutinized over the course of this matchup. Obviously, as I mentioned, Tech's going to be looking to lean on its defense, sustain those long drives, not only keep Kennesaw State's offense off the field, but at the same time, grind down their defense as well. Play that complementary football, as I talked about earlier in this preview. Now, for Kennesaw State, I think the biggest key for them really striking early, getting those explosive drives, and really forcing Tank, I guess, on the back foot, right? Whenever they're playing complementary football on the offensive side of the ball. That's what Louisiana Tech wants to do. But if you can make it to where maybe it's a little bit more of a shootout, and that's the thing, too, with Louisiana Tech. We've seen Tech when they have a brand of football that they know what they want to do and they know how to win with it. But one thing that we haven't seen Louisiana Tech do yet is win in a shootout. If Kennesaw State can find explosives and find a way to exploit this Louisiana Tech defense that really no other team has been able to do yet this year. If Kennesaw State can do that, can you make Louisiana uncomfortable from that perspective? Maybe throw them off balance from an offensive perspective. Maybe even mess around, win that line of scrimmage. Mix up that tempo to really disrupt how they really want to handle things from an offensive side of things. I think that's something that I think obviously a fast start is going to really help Kennesaw State if they're going to pull this upset off in their home building. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and check out the model. I'm recording this on the night of October 5th, so obviously the lines could change by then, by the time this video is officially up on YouTube, but here's what I'm seeing right now. So, FanDuel right now has Louisiana Tech as about a touchdown favorite. However, my internal metrics here at College Football Red Zone actually has Louisiana Tech given them much more love. The Bulldogs are a 2-touchdown favorite, a -16 for Louisiana Tech over Kennesaw State, in spite of the fact that this game is on the road for the Bulldogs. So this is what I'm seeing from my side of things, right? So even with this game happening at home, and I do want to mention once again that Kennesaw State, there is a clear improvement in every aspect of the operation. Offense, defense, special teams, it's all improved from last year. Do I think that this is a program that is capable of beating the top teams in the CUSA and competing with those top programs? Because I'm gonna tell you what, right now, Louisiana Tech I haven't seen a lot of talk on the national stage about them, even for G5 centric shows, but Louisiana Tech, man, they definitely deserve some love for sure. So with that being said, I think with Louisiana Tech being a clear favorite, and I love what they've been able to do over the course of the year, I just think at the end of the day, this is the type of game where it's not really a great matchup for Kennesaw State, with just how suffocating the Bulldogs have been defensively. So I do think this is going to be a competitive battle, because we have seen Jerry Mack, find a way to maximize the talent on his roster. And with it being in home too, there's going to be a 4-quarter fight. Don't get it twisted, but I still like the spot for Louisiana Tech. I think they match up pretty well against this Kennesaw State Owl squad. And with all that said, I will say that not only do I think the Bulldogs will win, I think there's a slight lean as well for them to cover as well. So, I'm gonna roll with Louisiana Tech winning 27-20, get them to 5-1, and that's also gonna put the Bulldogs on the verge of bowl eligibility if that win could potentially happen. Alright, so meanwhile, we do have one more CFP elimination game here for your enjoyment here tonight. It's not happening in the Conference USA, but it is happening in the conference and has been receiving the most attention since, at least from the G5 perspective, and that is that American Conference, which, similar to what we seen last year, the American looks like to be a gauntlet for G5 standards. However, is it going to be one of those things where are we going to see the American cannibalize itself to the point where the G5 representative ultimately comes from another conference, or will the American overcome that, someone from the American overcome that gauntlet and find their way into the college football playoff and get that representation for the first time since 2021, when Cincinnati was a member of this conference? Now, the big time matchup that is happening in the American that does have CFP elimination game implications, in my opinion, Eastern Carolina, man. The Pirates, they are heading down to New Orleans. They're going to be taking on the Tulane Green Wave, and what's really going to be another crucial midweek American Conference showdown, 7:30 Eastern, happening over in Yulman Stadium. Now, last time we saw Tulane notably on the national stage, we were seeing them getting pants by Ole Miss. It was an embarrassing performance, and not only this coaching staff, but Jake Redsoff and the boys would let you know that what happened in that game was simply unexpected. They expected to play a lot better. Now, it would have been fair, at least from a fan perspective, not expecting Tulane to win. That would have been an unfair expectation, but the fact that they didn't even compete in that game, that was a really hard look against one of the powers in the SEC. But give them credit, man. They did bounce back. They're able to refocus, dust their shoulders off, and handle Tulsa pretty convincingly. Jake Redsoff, really showing that dual threat ability, able to run for a touchdown, looked pretty good for the air as well. Plus, Javin Gordon was able to have a pretty good performance on the ground as well. 78 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was about a 2 touchdown win for Tulsa last week, and being able to ultimately refocus as well. But now you got an East Carolina team that's coming into town, and you notice that East Carolina, they have a 3-2 record, but I want to say this from what I've seen from them overall this year, outside the BYU game. The BYU game was rough for East Carolina. This is a team that's better than I think what the record ultimately shows. Case in point, we saw them last Thursday against the Army Military Academy, normally one of the most disciplined teams in the country, like on a year in, year out basis. And East Carolina absolutely blows them out of the field. A 28-6 win for Army. Honestly, could have been even worse. And particularly Caden Hauser looked pretty good in that Army game, able to get a throw for over 250 yards, multiple touchdowns. But this offense is not just about Caden Hauser. Really huge kudos to that East Carolina offensive line last week. I remember distinctly watching their Thursday night affair against the Army, and man, the way East Carolina was blowing Army off the ball when it comes to running plays, it was really something to watch. You rarely see that happen to the military academies. If it does happen, it's normally because they are going up against, a power conference team, like someone like the Notre Dames of the world. But to see someone like East Carolina do that, man, that offensive line, that is a pretty solid unit. And not to mention the defense obviously looked really good as well, really smothering that Army offensive attack. They had no answers for that defense on that Thursday night, forcing like key turnovers in the process too. So for Tulane, it's going to be really interesting to see, particularly that rushing attack for Tulane versus that East Carolina front seven. I think that's going to be one of the biggest keys in this matchup. Looking obviously, the quarterback battle between Jake Redsoff and Caden Hauser is going to get a ton of attention, but man, whoever wins between the Tulane rushing attack and that offensive line versus East Carolina's front seven, I think that could really dictate the overall tempo of this game. Obviously, whoever wins the turnover battle will be extremely important as well. But I think that's going to be the top thing to watch is how does Tulane's offensive line hold up against this East Carolina front seven? If Tulane can find a way to, gash East Carolina consistently, it's going to be a long Thursday night for the Pirates, who are going to be in front of a rocking Yulman Stadium. And speaking of that stadium, we'll go ahead and check what the model thinks real quick. So right now, Tulane is favored, about a touchdown favorite, but right now the Redzone model is saying that, hey, this game should be a little bit tighter than what's being reported right now. Our model is saying that Tulane should only be a 5.5 point favorite, while FanDuel is a little bit higher on the green wave. So it's very crystal clear that this game is going to have massive ripple effects, not only in the American Conference, but it's going to have some ripple effects in the entirety of the G5 landscape. So when I say this pick, I'm not super confident in this pick, but here's two things that I do know right now. Right now, I know that this game is happening in the Bayou, in a rocking Yulman Stadium. That stadium is going to be electric on Thursday night. Plus, John Summerall is still on the sideline. I am really high on John Summerall. right about now, man. So with those two things combined, this is going to be a real, I think, most fascinating matchup of Thursday night is this one right here. But I'm going to lean towards Tulane leading this game. I think they're going to win in a highly competitive game, 31-24. So for us, we're going to disagree with the model a little bit. We are disagreeing from a standpoint of whether Tulane should cover or not. The model disagrees that East Carolina should cover, even though they're a road underdog. We're going to say that I think Tulane does cover here because we think that they're going to win 31-24. We think that's what the final score is going to be. But guys, if you have an opportunity to watch this game on a Thursday night, do it. It's going to be a really fun one, and I can't wait to see a highly competitive game within the American Conference. Which, guys, that is going to wrap things up here for the CFP elimination special going into week number 7. Definitely let me know down in the comments, if you disagree with me or, have your own thoughts in terms of not only how you think the 2 elimination games that we have are going to be going down or how you think they're going to be in full effect. Also, let me know like what teams should be getting more CFP elimination consideration, or in the opposite, if a team should be taken more seriously. Definitely let me know down in the comment section. But with that being said, I am your host, Jake of College Football Red Zone, signing off. But hopefully you guys are all out there having a great night. Take care, everybody.